The Green Bay Packers didn't play in the divisional round of the playoffs, but we still learned a lot about them. I'll tell you what I mean.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. What time is it? Game time. Look, I know the Packers didn't play divisional weekend, but the way those games played out added a ton of context for me about this team moving forward. And let me start here. Sam Hoppen, who happens to be a Packers fan, but is also an advanced analytics, advanced metrics, numbers, gambling guru. He does this thing called net success rate. How bad did you really lose? How bad did you get outplayed down to down, play to play? I don't know if there's any stickiness in that metric. I don't. But I will tell you, every single division round winner lost the net success rate battle, which means down to down, play to play. The other team, the team that lost, had more success offensively and defensively. We're talking about net success rate than their opponent. It was the turnovers. The turnovers. And if you watched that Ravens-Bills game, Lamar made a couple strike throws down the field. There was that huge defensive pass interference call that should have been offensive pass interference. But otherwise, it was mostly running. It was mostly receiver screens and underneath throws. Lamar Jackson pushed it more vertically than Josh Allen. But the same thing with Patrick Mahomes. The same thing with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts had 130 yards passing. Josh Allen under 150 yards passing. Patrick Mahomes under 200 yards passing. It was run the football, play defense. It was, interestingly, the script that the Packers had tried to use the entire second half of the season. And there is a section of Packers fans going, see, he doesn't trust Jordan Love. He doesn't believe in Jordan Love. He won't even let him throw the ball, which is not true because when Jordan Love did throw the ball, he's throwing it vertically, constantly pushing the ball all the time. That's the whole point of what they want this offense to be. They want it to be layups and three-pointers. The problem is you can't shoot enough three-pointers in the NFL. You can't take enough shots. And when you do, you're adding in variance. All three interceptions that Jordan Love threw were on attempts to create explosive plays. A 20-yard dig route that was run at 15 yards. So the timing and everything is totally off, but they're trying to create an explosive play. Now they're trying to catch up, but they're trying to create an explosive. Dontavian Wicks, down the sideline, one-on-one, go ball, sideline. It gets intercepted. The details of that play were off. Dontavian Wicks doesn't stack. Darius Slay, problems. And then the last one is a heave. There's DPI. But they're trying to create explosives. And this was part of the issue all year for the Packers in these big games. They couldn't be efficient enough running the ball. Now, part of it is that they didn't play good enough defense in a lot of these big games. But they couldn't be efficient enough running the ball to stay in a positive game script. They fall down early, turn the ball over to the Eagles. Right away, they're down 7-0. The Lions, the first game, it's 7-0 off the rip. The defense didn't play well enough situationally early in the games to keep the Packers in a positive game script. And you can say, well, against the bad teams, they did, but that's the problem, is you need to play some better complementary football than the Packers played. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it reflects poorly on Jordan Love that Matt LaFleur wanted to play this way. Look, in the postseason, this is the way teams that win in the postseason are able to play, but you have to be able to play complementary football. And don't turn it over. Lamar Jackson, the Mark Andrews play, the drop on the 2-point conversion is going to be the talking point. Lamar coming up short. Everyone has their excuses ready. He threw a pick in the first half. He fumbled in the first half. The fumble leads to a touchdown. Jordan Love is lucky that the one interception, the Packers got to stop defensively. And the one at the end doesn't really matter. They're down, double digits when that happens. The game is essentially over at that point. You're just trying to make something happen and give yourself a shot with an onside kick. Who knows? The other piece of this, to me, is Jordan Love as a runner. Now, he's never going to be Josh Allen, but that's okay. He's never going to be Lamar Jackson, but that's okay. He can be Patrick Mahomes, the runner. Mahomes is not twitchy as a runner. He's not explosive as a runner, but he's got terrific feel and understanding. Okay, the C's part, I'm taking off. I'm just going to go. He's decisive as a runner. And Jordan Love in 2023 did run the ball. In 2023, he had 8 runs of 10 plus yards, 8 explosive runs. He had 3 runs over 20 yards. Now, 17 quarterbacks had at least as many as Love in 2023. So he's like average. And I think something like 45 or 50 quarterbacks ran the ball at least once. So by the next gen stats, like 17 among starters, you're kind of in that middle range, right? In 2024, I know Love was hurt. He had 3 runs of 10 plus yards. 3. 37 quarterbacks had at least as many. And Ben Fennell had this great stat that outside of 3rd and 4th down sneaks, essentially, Love had only 6 first downs with his legs all year. 6 first downs. He, in the second half of 2023, did everything from the pocket. He didn't ever have to escape and break down. Against the Cowboys, he did a little bit. He's moving around. He's making strike throws all over the field. I'm telling you, the one of the biggest things was his health all year. Ability to beat the blitz, ability to beat man coverage. You play less man coverage against the Packers if he's going to take off. It's why it's hard to play man against Josh Allen. It's why it's hard to play man even when the receivers were bad for Kansas City. It's hard to play against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs man coverage. Oddly, it was not man coverage that got the Packers beat in this game, but there were a number of times when it would have behooved Jordan Love to take off. It is startling to me how athletic he is for how unwilling he is to scramble. It is something that I think in the playoffs, and Mina Kimes and Dominique Foxworth talked about this after the loss. It was an issue for Justin Herbert. Has been an issue with Justin Herbert since he came into the league. Sometimes when you have the athleticism, the best thing you can do is check it down to your feet. Don't try and make the throw. He wants to make every throw. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just run for 6 yards. Keep yourself on track. I think the Packers, one of the first 2 or 3 drives every game, should be running zone read. There were a couple times against the Eagles, he had opportunities to pull it. Backside defensive end crashing in hard. You keep it, it's 6, 8, 10 yards. Easy, before a safety even thinks to arrive. Just to have that in the back of the brain of every defensive end, of every second level defender, of every deep safety. Oh, hey, maybe we got to play more quarter. Maybe we got to deal with this in a different kind of way. It would make a meaningful difference for the Packers. Now, I have more of these, more lessons. And we'll talk about Ben Johnson to the Bears at the end of today's Locked On Packers. But more lessons next. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Some of the most fun things that I've done in New York, in Milwaukee, in LA, all over the country have been live events. Now, Gametime makes it even easier to get tickets to your favorite events with new features, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to filter out all of the silliness. With Gametime Picks, you can find amazing deals and even see your seat before you buy. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows you the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. One of the other big parts of this, and it's related to the first piece, is I don't see personnel as the big problem for the Packers. I did not come out of divisional round weekend going, the Packers aren't talented enough to beat any of these teams. Look at the variance. Turnovers. Well, what were the Packers elite at this year? Creating turnovers. If you look, the Packers first downs, total yards, all those things with the Eagles, even if you just look at the box score and erase the turnover number, it's an even game. Guess what? So is Chiefs Texans. Guess what? Eagles Rams like way outplayed the Eagles down to down, play to play. But some sacks, some turnovers, that's your ball game. That was, of course, a huge part of the Ravens. It's these little things. And by the way, listen to the discourse from Baltimore. I talked to Kevin Ostreicher for Locked On Sports Today after the Ravens-Bills game, and he was like, this is what the Ravens have done all year. They beat themselves. Whoa! Does that sound familiar to anybody? This is what the Packers have been. This is what ultimately the playoffs can come down to. I mean, the Detroit Lions were the best team all year, and they couldn't stop turning the ball over. They turned the ball over so many times they had a receiver throw an interception. I mean, it was brutal. Jared Goff was brutal. He'd taken care of the football really outside of 2 games extremely well all year. The defense, the injuries finally bit them in the ass. But that's the thing is I look around and I go, well, the Packers played the Rams and they beat them. And I think in a rematch, they would have beat them again. I don't think the Commanders are a better team than the Packers. In fact, over the course of the year, the Packers were better. Better offensively, better defensively. Now, Jaden Daniels played better than Jordan Love this season. Jaden Daniels was a top 5 quarterback this year. What are we talking about? He was incredible. It gets me to my next point. The personnel, to me, even with some of the receiver question marks, even with some of the difference maker questions up front, even with Jordan Love looking like Jordan Love this year versus Jordan Love at the end of last year, to me, it's not the personnel. It's who you are at the end of the year. Who are you in December and January? Last year, the Packers were explosive. They were dynamic. They were playing above their heads defensively in a lot of ways because they were a bad defense. And remember, the last month of the year, they still almost lost to Bryce Young, lost to Tommy DeVito, got wrecked by Baker Mayfield, but they won their last 2 games. They go in riding that high. Jordan Love against the Lions, against the Chiefs, they showed that. They had an identity that this Packers team just didn't have. It is the most important thing for the 2025 Packers is to ensure that Jordan Love and the offense are playing their best at the end of the year. Every single team in the Final 4 is a top 10 offense and a middling defense between 12 and 18 by EPA per play. So the Packers had the offense. They had the defense. They just didn't have it clicking at the right time. This Packers team was, by talent, by personnel, good enough to be one of the Final 4 teams. Frankly, good enough to win the whole damn thing. I did not come away from Divisional Round weekend going, the Packers could not have played with any of these teams. I didn't. Now, would they, in the circumstances that they got, have beaten any of these teams? No. They weren't playing well enough at the end of the year. I think you can make the case that the smart decision for the Packers would have been to just sit everybody in week 18. Forget the seeding. Who cares? The Commanders are probably going to beat Cooper Rush, which they ended up doing anyway. They end up sitting Jaden Daniels, who was not playing well, by the way. They sit him down. Marcus Mariota comes in and they win that game. Now, I think there would have been a difference if they don't botch that last play and let the Bears get in field goal range. If you let DJ Moore catch the ball 10 yards, or you have the spy in the middle of the field where you're supposed to have it and you get it, let's just say you get a deflection and it's game over, then, or it's 4th down and you win the game, I think that feels pretty different. To do that, you lose Christian Watson, you come back, you win the game at home, even if it doesn't affect your seeding, it just feels better. It feels different. You go in with a different set of expectations. But they just couldn't do it. And it is those little details that cost them this year. But it's the same details that cost the Ravens, by the way, all year. Pretty similar profile, in fact, overall. The Ravens just got to play the Steelers in the first round because they played in a weaker division. And the Packers had to go play the Eagles. Ravens were first by DVOA. They lost anyway. Packers were top 5 in DVOA and lost. Lost to the Eagles, who were worse than them. But Eagles were rested, playing their best, especially defensively. Although a couple weeks ago, Jaden Daniels got them, but Jaden Daniels gets everybody. And that game changed when Jalen Hurts gets hurt. It's Kenny Pickett. It's a different animal. Now, the last thing I want to say about the lessons. I watched Isaiah Likely make huge play after huge play for the Ravens. Mark Andrews. I don't think there's a huge talent difference between where Tucker Kraft is right now and those guys. Mark Andrews was really good for the Ravens down the stretch. He makes the biggest play of the game for the Bills. Isaiah Likely and Tucker, they were 1 and 2 all year in yak for tight ends. They just are able to feature Isaiah Likely a little bit more. But you look at the numbers, and this was the one that really stood out to me. In the low red zone, Matthew Stafford threw touchdowns to tight ends twice, and if not for Jalen Carter at the end, he was going to throw another one because Higbee was getting open on a linebacker on a little return route. And I'm like, Tucker Kraft could do that. In the low red zone especially. Now, Matt LaFleur talked about wanting to feature Tucker Kraft more. I look at the Chiefs with Travis Kelce, the Texans getting Dalton Schultz involved in their offense, the Bills with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. Too many. That's too many. That's too many of those kind of names. It can be such a weapon for you. And the Packers, I do think at times Matt LaFleur tried to be a little too democratic, a little too egalitarian, lean into the play, some of the best plays all year, like the slant touchdown to Tucker Kraft. He bodies up a safety and makes a great play in the end zone. The catch he makes against the Texans for a touchdown. The big play he makes on Mini Wyleek for a touchdown, 70-yard touchdown run against the Rams. He is last year was better than any season Tyler Higbee has ever had, but in the low red zone, they are designing plays to get Tyler Higbee open because Matthew Stafford trusts him in an offense where you don't trust fully everyone, or you don't think, hey, one-on-one, Romeo Doubs definitely going to beat that guy. And maybe it is the Packers have too much trust in those guys. But I watch lesser tight ends, lesser athletes, lesser players get these opportunities and win with them. Tucker Kraft could be doing a lot of that stuff. And I see the same thing, by the way, with Jaden Reed. I watch Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I know that he in the slot 55% of the time. Jayden Reed's in the slot about 75% of the time. I'd like to see them give Jayden Reed some more opportunities to play boundary receiver. But so many of the little option routes and the return routes and some of just the little things underneath routes, Tucker Kraft can do that. Jayden Reed can do that. And this is where your short and intermediate passing game in the playoffs is so important. It's just like in basketball. If you're a three-point shooting team and the threes aren't falling, what is your second punch? What else can you go to? And for the Packers, they didn't really have a good answer all year. It's because they don't have a go-to guy. This is where the go-to guy can become the proxy for the, hey, just do it. That guy's going to be open. You have to be a little bit more thoughtful with it and say, okay, Jayden Reed, we know on this little option. And Jayden Reed is a different body type than Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he's athletic enough to run those routes. Amon-Ra St. Brown is not Justin Jefferson, like routing up guys. He's not that. He's shifty underneath. He's tough to handle underneath, but Jayden Reed is really quick. He can get in and out of breaks. There have been times when you see him go in motion and he's got to cut up field and then immediately break off of it, and he can do it. I'd like to see the Packers say, hey, Jayden, all offseason, we want you to run option routes, return routes, follow routes, whip routes, whatever you want to call them, whatever you want them to be in the offense. On 3rd and 5, those are the plays. And Tucker Kraft, you too. Hell, run them mirrored on both sides and make teams have to defend that. When teams know you want to sling it deep and you can't really throw to the intermediate part of the field because guys aren't getting open or the routes are not designed for that, or you don't have good options underneath. The Dallas Goedert play is such a great example from the playoff game where the Packers, they bring the all-out pressure. Jalen Hurts sees it. He changes the coverage. Not like the all-out pressure against the Cowboys where he changes, sets the protection, and then throws the touchdown, the strike down the field. No, this is, hey, I got to get the ball out of my hands quick. I'm just going to get it out to Dallas Goedert on a little receiver screen. And he does the rest. Why is that not in the offense for Tucker Kraft? Why is that not an alert? All that stuff is there. And again, this goes to my point about the personnel. The Packers have the personnel. They just have to deploy it a little bit differently. Now, would some new personnel change the math, change the dynamics? I think it would. But I don't think it's necessary. All right, we have to do it. We have to talk about it. Ben Johnson is the new head coach of the Chicago Bears. We'll talk about it next on Locked On Packers. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. I don't want to make PrizePicks pay out something that they don't. 1,000 times your money is still a lot. You can make picks in less than 60 seconds, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payouts or you want to win cash quickly, get that money. Once you've won it, PrizePicks has got you covered with over 10 million members and billions in winnings. It's clear people are loving the platform. So, a special offer for my listeners, Locked On NFL, is the code. Download the app and use that code, Locked On NFL, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Don't even have to win it, just play it. That's PrizePicks. Run your game. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. Now for your second listen, go check out Locked On NFL with 2 shows now every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. So the Bears. They did the thing every Bears fan wanted them to do, and they hired Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, an extremely accomplished over the last few years anyway, offensive coach. It's hard to imagine a more different situation to walk into. I have no idea if it's going to work or not. And if anyone tells you with any degree of certainty that they know, they are lying. They are talking out of their rectums. because they do not know. Of all the things that we project in sports, projecting coaches is the thing that we are perhaps the worst at. It's coaches and quarterbacks. And by the way, Caleb Williams was bad last year. Like statistically bad. Qualitatively bad. Really bad. So, okay. We don't know if Ben Johnson's going to be good. I think Ben Johnson's a very smart coach. Constantly has creative, thoughtful play designs. 500 yards of offense over the weekend, 31 points. Jared Goff also threw a bunch of interceptions. They threw a receiver pass where he throws an interception. I don't think it would be fair to project him to be the next Bill Walsh or the next Sean McVay. But the Bears did the thing that the rest of the league wanted to do that had open coaching candidates. They wanted to hire Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is very well thought of around the league. It strikes me that the Bears are going to win the offseason yet again. And we'll see if it's any different this year. It was supposed to be different last year. It was supposed to be different the year before that. It's supposed to be different the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that. Bears fans have declared it their year every single year for the last 20 years. And they get amnesia. It's wild how they just get this amnesia. Like they talk all this trash. And then it blows up in their faces all fall and winter. And then by mid-January, they're ready to repeat the cycle. I mean, I don't know what happens in their, what switch flips in their brain to get them to that place, but it happens every year, it seems. We just don't know. Matt LaFleur was ranked second last or last on most of the big media coaching hire lists when he was hired. He and Zach Taylor are the only guys still employed. And I'm frankly a little surprised Zach Taylor is still employed in Cincinnati. People thought Cliff Kingsbury was a better hire than Matt LaFleur. People thought Freddie Kitchens was a better hire than Matt LaFleur. Those people are wrong. Wrong. Okay? 5 years ago, everyone had different coaches. There are only 8 coaches still employed that were coaching 5 years ago. And Matt LaFleur is one of the 8. So 75% of teams turn their coaches over the course of a 5-year span. Or 75% of coaches. That's wild. Chances are it's not going to work. But I don't know. And let me say this for the Bears fans listening, because I know they are. I did not think the Bears would pay the money it would take to sign and hire Ben Johnson. I did not think Ben Johnson would want to deal with the McCaskies and the Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles piece of this. He said he wanted alignment in the front office. He's not getting that. In Las Vegas, he would have got to bring his own general manager. He would have had the alignment that he was looking for, but not the players. There's no one on that team. Caleb Williams, apparently an attractive piece in all of this. That has to be based on college stuff because nothing in the NFL suggests that that's the case, but we'll see. The Lions had the best offensive line in the league or the second best offensive line in the league. The Bears have the 17th or 18th best offensive line in the league. And I think 3 guys in hitting free agency that are preferred starters. Caleb Williams is nothing like Jared Goff as a quarterback. So this is going to be a huge adjustment. Ben Johnson is betting on himself. Now the defense, plenty of talent there. Are you getting the right guys in place? Dennis Allen is the rumored guy to come in. He's a very good defensive coach. Very good defensive coach. Darren Rizzi, one of the best special teams coaches in the NFL, the guy the Packers should have hired. And by the way, the guy that they should, if they could hire him now, they should. They should. Now, he probably doesn't want that job after they spurned him the first time, but if they walk out of this with Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen, and Darren Rizzi, that is not great for the Packers. Now, all of this stuff about Matt LaFleur, he's the worst coach in the division. Now, can we chill out? Can we chill out? Kevin O'Connell could win a playoff game. Let's start there. Dan Campbell could do something. He's losing his offensive coordinator, who was hugely impactful on this team. He's losing likely his defensive coordinator, who was hugely impactful on this team. You have to replace those guys. Ask John Harbaugh if that's easy. Ask Mike Tomlin if that's easy. When you're a CEO coach, when you don't work on one side of the ball, it's extremely hard to deal with that. Now, it's better than being a defensive coach and having to constantly hire offensive coordinators. But is it? At least if you're a defensive coach, you're a defensive coach and you can help on defense. Now, Mike Tomlin theoretically does that. Dan Campbell's an offensive guy, called plays a couple years ago when they turned their offense around. Could he probably, I assume he's helpful on offense, but he's not the play caller. Much more direct impact on the offense. We'll see what Dan Campbell really is. We'll see if Brian Flores gets a job. If the Vikings lose Brian Flores, I think you can make the case the Packers would have the best coaching staff in the division again. But we'll see. We'll see. All right, more to come. I want to talk about Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker coming up this week. If you missed it yesterday, we had Evan Williams on the show, on the program. Check that out if you missed it. Follow me on all the social medias, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on all the social medias, Locked On Packers. Subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. Rate and review the show so you can stay Locked On Packers.